Have you ever been in love? I remember when I was younger, people would say, you know you're in love when you're in it. You just know it. And I'm like, that is so unclear. But it did become clear. Since then, I've learned an awful lot more about love and attachment and what drives us to seek the people that we do and to fall in love the way in which we do. So I'm going to start by explaining the 3 different areas that we are biologically, evolutionarily driven to use in matters of the heart and matters of other areas. So the psychobiology of love, we can give a lot of credit to Dr. Helen Fischer for doing an awful lot of research. She was an anthropologist and she wanted to understand why we love and why we fall in love with certain people. And she discovered that there were 3 different areas of the brain that are associated with love, mate, selection, mating. Obviously, as a species, we have to continue our DNA. And so we do have this basic circuitry that is associated with lust. Now, I'm going to give credit to Jack Panskep here because I think he was an amazing man that discovered so much about basic emotional circuitry in mammals. He studied rats, and rats are mammals. And he discovered 7 basic circuitries across all mammals. And these are lust, rage, care, panic, fear, seeking, and play. Play is particularly cute because he discovered that by tickling rats. They giggle, apparently. So cute. So lust helps us find a mate. It's driven by testosterone in men and women, and it's what helps keep the species going. But as we became bipedal and we needed to have our infants with us longer, they weren't able to get up and roam around. So we need to keep this infant, a human infant, which is highly dependent, like really, really dependent, like they're so dependent, for back in the old days, 2, 3, 4 years old. Now it's like 18 to 35, I think. So humanoids developed a way of staying together with the one person because the male wanted to protect his infant. That's his bloodline. And the female wanted to keep the male around because that's his child and she needed to be cared for and protected. And so pair bonding for at least 4 years was not unusual throughout, Neanderthal races. Now, of course, we want to do it for an awful lot longer. So we have to keep this chemistry going further and develop a deep romantic bond or attachment. And so attachment, there's a huge amount of information out there about attachment and attachment styles, and I'll be talking to that a little bit later in the video also. So you've got lust, you've got infatuation, romance, head over heels, in love, like I demonstrated, just play acting on my phone at the beginning of the video, and then you've got attachment, the enduring, happily ever after kind of love. Now, these are all associated with different brain regions, as I mentioned, lust, testosterone, a little bit of dopamine, infatuation, and romantic love, like that full heady feeling, that head over heels feeling, is actually located in the back of the brain in the ventral tegmental area. This is associated with the ruminating thoughts, the can't get them out of my mind. There's a certain Australian singer that sung a song that was like that, can't keep you out of my head, or something like that. Anyway, that's where somebody's kind of living rent-free in our head. Now, I'm going to talk further to this in other videos about some people that is short-lived and some people it's a repetitive cycle of getting this feeling for someone and never progressing much into the further stage of attachment, of more stable love, of the growing kind of love, which is associated again with different neurochemicals and a different brain area. And the chemical mostly associated with is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is what makes us fall in love with our babies, plus a little bit of prolactin and sleep deprivation. Don't ask me how that works. And it also helps us bond to partners. But of course, bonding to someone is difficult because people are difficult. Other people do not live into that fantasy, ideal, romantic image that we had of them in the first place. In fact, there's a line that I really love and I cannot remember who to give credit to. And that is that the idea of love is that you attract someone and then let them down slowly. So what this means is that as we get to know people, we have to take off the gloss of the romantic infatuation to some degree to actually know who that person is in earnest. Now, a lot of people fall out of love at this point in time, and this is where I'm going to be talking in my videos about love addiction and limerence to much further. But right now, let's have a little overview of this attachment thing that is going to help us endure through getting to know someone, getting let down by them, staying attached to them, staying in love and loving them, and keeping that oxytocin and little spikes of dopamine and all of the other good neurochemicals coursing along in our brain, body, and love life. So what is attachment? Attachment is basically bonding. It's how we are going to be in relationship with someone, and we understand it to be largely based on our early experiences. This does not mean that your attachment style per se is fixed, because we do know that once we get to know someone and we establish a good, wholesome, steady, committed relationship, that we can actually gain a greater sense of security in our attachment system. So what the heck am I talking about if you've never heard about attachment? Studying infants, the early developmental psychologists realized that babies behaved differently when they were separated and when they joined back and saw their mothers again. And so attachment is split into two broad categories. The babies that were seen as being securely attached. That is, they had a sense of trust in their parents and in the world, and they grow up with this trust. It's a very different way of being than it is to be anxiously attached. So when the infant didn't get the sufficient amount of regularity and care in having their needs met and being attuned to, they develop an insecure attachment. Obviously, this is a very complex dynamic. One, it has nothing to do with whether or not the parent loved the baby. It has more to do with how the parent could respond to that child and how the child or the baby could receive that attentiveness, that attunement, and the regularity and predictability of that over time. Now, I really want to put a piece in here about parents do not need to be perfect. 100% all the time, exactly nail on the head, knowing what your baby wants is not only impossible, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a secure attachment, because we are not built to live in a perfect world. We need to develop the ability to tolerate a certain amount of frustration. And a baby doesn't need to have every single need identified and met immediately. Otherwise, it doesn't ever develop the capacity to hold and wait. It doesn't develop the ability to tolerate frustration, and that is inhibiting to growth. If a baby can't crawl along the floor and reach out for a toy itself and struggle and grapple to get there, and it might whinge and cry, and in the process, that struggling and efforting is a very important part of the development of the little human. So, perfect parenting? No. Good enough parenting? Yes. And so the good enough mother was attuned enough to the infant to understand what the infant kind of meant, because it's really tricky, and meet those needs and instill in the infant a basic sense of trust. And this basic sense of trust echoes into what we call a secure attachment. I trust the world. I know that my needs will probably get met. I know that it's safe to express emotions, and I also know that it's okay to regulate my own emotions eventually when they're older. And I feel okay when I go into a relationship as an adult because I trust that that other person isn't going to mess me up and, do odd sort of behaviors, because my mapping of the world is that of essential security. What a beautiful way to be. So for the rest of the babies that didn't develop that, they are called insecure. Go figure. Secure, insecure. And the insecurely attached infants manifested their insecure attachment in two broad categories. One is avoidant attachment, the other one is the insecure, anxious, ambivalent, or anxious, angry, ambivalent. There's a few different names for the anxious attachment style. So the insecure, avoidantly attached adult has learnt that regulation of emotions is their job. If they regulate them at all, often they will use distraction avoidance because they probably spent a lot more time alone, maybe playing alone, maybe being the good kid that didn't make too much trouble, because the parents either didn't have enough time or didn't have the capacity to attune to the baby fully, consistently, and also to sort of do this emotional attunement where you understand the infant's needs and you attune to them, which gives them this emotional mapping. Now, this is not to say that parents of avoidant children didn't love them. There are many, many different reasons why an infant can develop an insecure attachment. Often parents can be absent, they can be sick, they can be busy, they can be preoccupied with other children, with people in the household with various forms of sickness, mental health, addictions, disorders. So many things can go wrong as we grow up in the messy human world. But their style and their way of dealing with that was to go into themselves, kind of start playing alone. And when they observed these infants, when they were understanding the avoidant attachment, when the mother returned in the situations that they set up, the baby would basically ignore her and continue playing. I mean, we're talking toddlers, obviously, not little babies. And they notice this and they're like, this infant is engrossed in what it's doing, such to the extent that it's shutting out the mother. So avoidance will grow up to be beautiful people, but they might have a tendency to go inward when they have an emotional problem. And whether or not they're sorting out that issue is the other thing, because there's potential that they didn't have that knowing of what an emotion is. Because guess what? We learn our emotions by being told by our parents or our caregivers what those emotions are. It's like, oh, you're screaming, you must be upset or angry or happy or sad. Like, that's how we learn to label our emotions. So the avoidant might just distract themselves. They've learned to play alone. They've learned to be good in this way, and it becomes a default strategy. And in this way, this is what Stan Tatkin called an island. And I think an island is a better way to describe an avoidant, because it's not like they're avoiding people deliberately. It's not like they are, just antisocial. It's that they are sort of in their own space. They tend to want to be in their own space a lot, doing things that are auto-regulatory. So this could be gaming, it could be watching certain things online, it could be Netflix binging, and it could be exercising, or it could be a sporting activity, or it could be television watching, or anything that's engaging their mind, not allowing them to go deeply into emotional content, funnily enough. And that's not to say that they don't, but it means that they want a lot of time alone and they get stuck in that space, and that's how they regulate. Now, the anxious attached person doesn't regulate as much alone. I mean, they can, but they like to do it with other people, because they often would maybe have a parent that was kind of sometimes there, sometimes not, kind of hot, cold. These are your hot and cold people. Come here, go away kind of people. When they were observing these infants in the experiments that they set up, when the mother returned to these infants, the babies got angry. They would cry and they would protest, and rather than getting comforted by the mother, they would often push away. Notice the push-pull behavior. They wanted the mother, but they didn't want the mother. They were angry. They were upset that mummy went and left them alone with these weird researchers playing alone in the room. And so that's where they realized that these toddlers had not developed this sense of safety and security, that mum was gone for a bit, but she was coming back and everything was okay. They protested a lot. When we see the anxious attachment manifesting in adulthood, we can see a little bit more of a clingy, pursual behavior. Now, that doesn't sound great to call someone clingy, but there is a need for a constant sense of attachment. Someone with a more anxious attachment will want more reassurance. They like regulating with people. So this would be like the kind of people that rather than going into their little avoidance zone in their room on their computer, they will be talking to friends. They'll want to talk about it. They'll definitely want to talk to their partner. They'll want to sort that issue out right there and right now to the nth degree. Stan Tatkin called these people waves. There's a lot happening there. They're quite more so emotional. They're more ruminative. They're more intense sometimes. But it's not necessarily so that this attachment is so much better, because there's a lot of push-pull. People with this anxious attachment style can get really angry at their object of desire, not showing up, not responding properly, not working out what it is that they really are thinking and needing. And when you say there's nothing wrong, you better not believe that. So there's a lot of sort of anger and a little bit more dysregulation in that way. But there's also a lot of pulling away. So someone who's more anxiously attached in this way, more ambivalence. So ambivalence is whether you're like, I'm not too sure if I really, really want you or I really, really don't want you. And so that come here, go away can get a little bit extreme, but it's not necessarily the case in everyone all the time, because it really depends on who you're paired up with. But all too often, someone who's anxiously, ambivalently, angry, anxious, attached will find and gravitate towards someone who is, you guessed it, avoidant. So, match made in heaven. Somebody wants to talk and they want to be up at 3 a.m. really nutting out their relationship problems, and they need to work it out with the other person before they can sleep. And the avoidant is like, I just want to go to sleep and wake up in the morning and everything's okay. Can I get away for a minute and sort this out, because I can't sort it out in the heat of the moment. I can't work this out right now talking. I need to go inward and process deeply and maybe have a few days. So this is where the romantic attachments get tricky. Now, of course, if you're either one of these insecure attachments and you've paired up with someone who's in the secure attachment category, congratulations, you have hit the relationship jackpot. The one who's anxious, not the secure one. For the secure one, is probably going to be better able to tolerate and to ride this through and to help the insecurely attached person, particularly if they're the anxious ambivalent type, because the securely attached person is more consistent and more settled. But this may or may not always work out for the best, because obviously if they're securely attached, they believe in relationships, they want someone who trusts them also. The neediness, I say that politely, and the distrust or the need for more, even after the secure person has said, yeah, I like you, I'm into you, I'm just, busy over here for a bit and I'm coming back. Because the securely attached person is much more likely to be able to express, I like you. I would like to see if there's a future in this relationship. I work between these hours. I'm not very responsive on my phone. They have this inbuilt ability to describe themselves to the other and their process. And they expect, by virtue of their secure attachment, that the other will hear this and go, sure thing, thank you for filling me in. But if the other is insecurely attached, that reassurance isn't going to be enough. Because remember, they're ruminating more. They're thinking about the relationship. They're not really that great at regulating themselves in a relationship, and they may take some time to settle down and believe that that person is going to be there and to develop what we call earned security. So the anxious, ambivalent person can become or earn, which is like growing, developing, and flexing the capacity to become securely attached to that other securely attached person. Of course, they can do it with their avoidant partner. You just do work on the relationship and you work out what the relationship is for, what it's about, how you're different, and you stop making assumptions about each other. The avoidant can also develop more security, but they have to be aware of the effect of their avoidance way of being, their island-likeness, on a person who is maybe more secure and wants more intimacy and closeness, or someone who's more insecure and needs more reassurance and more contact and more regular sort of checking in. And so they have to be aware that this could be a problem for the other person. And even though every avoidant person will say, well, I don't mean any harm, this is just the way I am, it's like, well, if you want to have a relationship with that one and they need more from you, you're going to have to change the way you are just a little bit. And you have to be aware that when you go away into your zone for days or hours or even moments where you're not really there, the anxiously attached person goes nuts. It sets off signals in them. And so both of you have to be aware that you're in a relationship together. What is that relationship for? What are you both bringing into that relationship? What are you prepared to shift? How are you going to drive this ship where you can both be an island and a wave on the same boat, coursing yourselves towards a secure attachment? Sounds idyllic, doesn't it? I'm getting holiday beach island vibes here. And so the fundamentals of all the co-regulation and the agreements and terms in a relationship and all of the other nuts and bolts are all subjects for a different video. But in this video, I hope you've got a broad understanding of why we love, how we fall in love, the difference between intense initial infatuation and lust, and the difference between establishing a long-lasting, loving, bonded attachment. And then I hope you've understood the differences in attachment styles, that you might be more securely attached or you might be a little bit insecurely attached. The big point also is that there is a continuum. So you can have very secure, you can have secure but maybe leaning a little bit towards the avoidant side, or you can have an extremely, say, really insecure, like incredibly insecure, more all the way down to the sort of borderline spectrum of chaos and dysregulation at the idea of the love person disappearing. And these are all topics for other videos, which I will be making because I'm diving deep into love addiction, into limerence, into attachment, into infatuation, and into all of the wonderful world of love. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, you know what to do. And if you want to hear more from me, you also know what to do. Hit the subscribe and stay with me while I explain to you all about love. Have a lovely day. Love you. Bye.